So you want your business to be recommended by AI when somebody is searching for your service or a product that they're looking for? Well, there's 4 pillars that you need to follow in order to make that happen. Let's go through them. The first one is you need to have the right foundation done. Okay, call that foundation. This includes basically everything that's related to your business. So, your website, any social media, your Google business profile if you're a local business, call that GBP, which also includes Bing places. Kind of hard to read, but you get it. Also, not just that, but the content that you have on your website. So we'll just call that content because it needs to be relevant. So just because you have, say, an RV for rent or motorhome for rent doesn't mean that you have on your website saying that any of them are pet friendly. So if somebody's specifically looking for a pet friendly motorhome and you don't have that on the website, chances are you're going to get missed. So making sure that that question is answered, or really any of the questions that are answered around your topic, needs to be on your website or shared on your social media, anything related to it. But you really need it on your website. So that's super important. Now I'm going to put a little caveat here. There's also things like metadata, which is much more technical in nature. That's an element that is often debated. I'm just going to put that in there because it does seem to help. But basically, if you get these 4 things right, this part is small in nature. All right, so the next one is reputation. Reputation is super important because AI is not just going to rank or recommend anybody. If your business has a whole bunch of 1 stars and you have like a 2.0 rating on your Google business profile and Bing or anywhere else, why would it recommend you? You have a crappy company if you have a 2.2 rating. So why wouldn't it recommend somebody that has a much better rating? So that means you need to get reviews. This is super important and something that a lot of people don't do properly. So make sure you get your reviews. Now, I understand if you're in a niche like some of the healthcare niches, in particular psychotherapy, that one's really tough because you're not really allowed to ask for those reviews. So you got to be careful, but that is still a critical element. Also, things like credentials. So spell that right here, credentials. If you have, let's say you're a tree services company. If you have an arborist or an ASA, so make sure you have it on the website or the authority websites that have the credentials, make sure you're listed on there. So official credentials, anything that basically is licensed or has a credential, for instance, like a PEng, a professional engineer, that's an example of making sure that your credentials are listed. Also testimonials. Those are great as well. And I'm also going to include in here case studies. So if you have case studies on your website that talks about the things that you've done and the results that you've gotten from it, especially if you can kind of show it towards a specific company or basically a location, if you can have something that's legitimate here, and especially if it can be backed up by third-party results, then even better. So reputation, really important. Also, the next one is references. Now, this includes things like your directories. And what I mean by that are, if you're a business, Yellow Pages, Yelp, Foursquare, basically any of the major ones. Also, not just directories like those major business directories, but also specific ones for your niche. So if you're in the tourism industry, something like a TripAdvisor, or if you do dog training. If there's a dog training directory for your area, even better. Basically, anything that's you need to have two things really: relevance and location. Those are the two most important things. Although, I mean, Yelp and Yellow Pages, they're very broad, but those are the authority ones. They kind of are different, whereas you really want to have local directories, and even better if you can get a local directory for your service. Another one is news. I'm just going to say news, but news publications, anything that talks about your business, ideally in a good way, not in a bad way, but anything that talks about your business from a media source, that's great. So I'm going to use another one called backlinks. Now, this is kind of a generic term. It's more of a jargon term that we use in digital media or digital marketing, but it's basically any website that has a link back to your site. Now, it doesn't have to be an actual backlink anymore. It can just be a reference to your business. So it doesn't have to be an actual link. It can be a reference to your business, and that's still going to work. But the big thing is anything you can have, anytime you can have relevant, like a blog article or a group that's in your area referencing your business, that's a good thing to have. So in that respect, also discussion and forums. So now, I don't know, it seems to be Reddit and Facebook, public Facebook groups have been a big one in terms of seeing people talking about businesses or referencing businesses. So those are big ones, but it doesn't have to be something like that. It could just be a forum. If you're a car repair and you're in a car repair forum, you have references to your business, that can be enough. And it needs to be ideally, ideally you have a good conversation and it's actually talking about your business, but that's becoming more important. Reddit is, well, it's a big one right now, but that might change. And then the last one, I'm going to call this ranking. And so what it essentially means is search visibility, so that you are visible in things like Google and Bing as the big ones. You're visible in there. You don't have to necessarily rank as number one. So if you have these other parts in well done, you don't have to be number one in Google to get a reference, to be listed as the most recommended one in AI. A good example is I'm working with an RV rental business out of Conroy, Texas. They are, I think, number 3 behind a couple of the big platforms like Outdoorsy and RV Share. Those are the number 1 and 2, but Ashley RV is the first local one. So they're the first one that gets recommended by AI. And so that's a huge, important thing. But also not just in search, but also maps. So that's related to your Google Business Profile and your Bing places. So those are the 4 pillars. If you want to get your business listed and basically recommended as the number 1 business, and anytime somebody's looking for a service related to you in your area, that's what you need to do. I actually put on a 4-pillar clinic about a lot more detail of these. If you want to check it out, the link is below, and it'll help you get listed. So good luck. See you soon.